Abner is going to ask 3 questions of his opponent, the other general that represents David. These are the 3 most profound questions that can be asked. These are the 3 questions that all presidents and dictators and generals of all nations, when they go to war, they need to ask these 3 questions. And what are the answers to these 3 questions? It's amazing to me that we have all this going on, and I had no idea until I read this. You can't get better than these 3 questions. So Abner says to Joab, here's question number 1. Must the sword devour forever? That's question number 1. Question number 2, don't you realize that this will end in bitterness? Question number 3, how long before you order your men to stop pursuing their fellow Israelites? Those questions so affected Joab. Joab answered, as surely as God lives, if you had not spoken, the men would have continued pursuing them until morning. So Joab blew the trumpet, and all the troops came to a halt, and they no longer pursued Israel, nor did they fight anymore. So here are the 3 questions. In the yellow is the 3 questions in the NIV. But let me just tell you what the 3 questions mean in common language. Question number 1 is, do we have to keep killing each other forever? I know that officially it says, must the sword devour forever? But you understand, the question is, do we have to keep killing each other forever, throughout time? Very interesting question, isn't it? Question number 2, don't you realize that all this killing will end with everyone being bitter and angry and hurt? Don't you realize that that's what's going to happen? That it's never going to wind up in peace and loving and caring and hugging. It's going to wind up in bitterness. Question number 3, how long will it take before we stop killing our own relatives, our own brothers, our own countrymen? And since most wars are civil wars, it's cousin against cousin and brother against brother and relative against relative. How long till we realize, hey, we're killing our own family? Now, let's look at these 3 questions in reverse order. So let me start with number 3. How long will it take before we stop killing our own relatives? And almost every war is a war within the country, killing, even with the Ukraine and Russia. Up until this, they were actually very close, and they intermingled. They were friends until this war occurred. Israel, do you know, if you do enough studies, and a Jewish friend connected me to this, do you know that there's all kinds of genetic studies, and guess which group of people are genetically the closest to the Jews in Israel? Not just the Arabs, a certain group of Arabs, the Palestinians. Because for a couple thousand years, they have all lived together in that land, and they've intermarried and connected. So there's all kinds of studies that show the most connected genetically is the Palestinians and the Jews in their genetic testing or whatever. So it's kind of, they are literally, the war has nothing to do with genetics, because they are actually related. They're the closest related than any other group for the Jews and the Palestinians. Question number 2, do we realize that all this killing will end with everyone being bitter? So let's take the Ukraine. Do you think the Ukraine people are going to be bitter at Russia for a long time? Okay. Do you think Russia is going to be bitter at the Ukraine for a long time, since it's already cost them 315,000 Russians? What do you think? Do you think they'll be bitter? And then I wonder, in the future, is everyone going to be bitter at NATO and the USA? Because we have to decide if this is actually a proxy war taking place, like in Vietnam, that this isn't actually between Ukraine and Russia. This is between the USA and NATO and Russia. And so there's bitterness that can go all around. I get that Israel is bitter at Hamas. Hamas came in and innocent people they killed and raped and whatever. I get how Israel is bitter and mad at the Palestinians. But now the Palestinians from the Israel bombing, yes, they're killing Hamas, but he happens to be, in the midst of 50 innocent people that now have just been blown up. And now the Palestinians are going to be bitter, even if they were neutral before. Now they're like, you just blew up my parents. You just killed my son at the school. You just killed my relative at the hospital. And don't you realize that wars end up with people being bitter? We were talking about the Civil War in the United States. It happened, 140 years ago, 160 years ago. Do you know there are people to this day that are still bitter over that war? That the Southern people are still bitter about the people in the North, and this was about our sovereignty and right to become our own nation, and the people in the North, it's like, even though that happened long ago. The war lasted a long time. In 2 Samuel chapter 3, verse 1, the war between the house of Saul and the house of David lasted a long time. Although it probably was, I'll come back to that. Wars can last a long time. I know they keep saying, Israel, you've been at war for 100 days. When do you bring it to an end? Wars can last a long time. A lot of wars last at least 20 years, 40 years. And by the way, does anyone know how long has the Israel-Palestine conflict been going on officially? It started in 1917. It's considered by all the experts as the longest ongoing war conflict in the world this day. And through the last 100 years, there have been countries and presidents and all kinds of people that have tried to broker a peace between the longest ongoing conflict between two groups of people to no avail. But this brings us to question number one, which is, do we have to keep killing each other forever? It started back with when there were only 4 people on the earth. A civil war occurred between 2 brothers, and 25% of the population was killed. Since that point, there have been wars like you cannot believe. But now we're in 2024. We're very educated. Most people in the world have schooling and education. So we're all smart now. Do you know that everyone has a cell phone? And everyone's connected to the internet. We've come a long way. We are much smarter. We're more intelligent. We're more, sociable, more reasonable. And yet, there's 39 wars going on. And we're getting smarter on how we kill people. We now developed we have atomic warfare. We now are going into space, weaponizing space. We have biological warfare. There's labs in the world that are developing horrible diseases and stuff that if it would ever get out, millions of people could die. Can you believe that in 2019, that chemical warfare, we're using our brains and intelligence to be able to do, we have drones. I think it's scary when I hear about all these drones now. I'm like, what? That's scary. When they send, beehives of 100 drones to take out people are like, wow, we're at a whole new level of do we have to keep on killing each other forever? If I wasn't a Christian, my answer would be yes. There is something in men, something in women that we just are going to keep killing forever. And if it wasn't for being a believer, I think eventually the world would completely destroy itself. We would just kill each other off until it was the end. But I am a believer. And so the question is, are we going to keep killing each other forever? And my answer is no. It does come to an end. It comes to an end with the coming of Jesus Christ. And so that gives me hope. It gives me a lot of hope in what you see going on. I feel, sorry for the young people raising up, that they get to experience COVID and they get to experience these wars and probably like, why is this happening? Why do people do this? Why do we keep, the budget in the United States that we're now paying in taxes for warfare is incredible. It's huge, the amount of money. And I get it. I guess we got to keep strong, because if we don't, other countries will take advantage. But it's tough days.